was no reason to allow millions of criminals into our country, millions. People that were, I'd say 3 million, 4 million, 21 million people all told, but 3 million, 4 million criminals, many, many thousands and thousands of murderers, people that murdered people, killers, people that murdered 2 people, 3 people, and even 4 people in jail, in solitary confinement. They let them out of jails.
Whenever Donald Trump speaks, it is bound to backfire. He is likely to humiliate himself, and usually things go wrong. And that is exactly what we saw at Donald Trump's most recent speech, if we can really even call it that. And it's clear that there is a limiting of how much Donald Trump is going out there and actually opening his mouth. I feel like we in fact hear more from Elon Musk, the real president, than we do Donald Trump. And I think this speech shows us exactly why that is the case, because it just went so wrong and got so strange so quickly. And Donald Trump actually said something about one of his cabinet nominees that really doesn't look good, but we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means a lot to me. Now let's get into some of the weirdest moments from this speech.
I hear so much about the word groceries. I used to use groceries a lot on the trail. A word that's like sort of an old-fashioned word, groceries. But groceries is the word that's the most accurate word. And the price of groceries went through the roof. Bacon was levels like nobody's ever seen. You take a look at eggs today. I mean, the eggs are double, triple, quadruple. They're going through the roof. Now, there's some problems that may, a little outside problem with eggs, maybe. But, we inherited a mess.
I think it's so funny not only how Donald Trump talks about grocer like it's this foreign concept to him or a word that he just came up with. He's always like, people talk about groceries. It's this interesting word because he's just so damn stupid. But it's also funny that he so clearly defines the conversation about the price of groceries to something in the past. He's just like kind of looking back on it. It's like, remember when we used to talk about groceries on the campaign trail? Because he so clearly does not care about the price of anything. He does not care about the rising price of eggs. He doesn't care about the rising price of gas. Actually, he does, because we're about to get into that in just a second. But it is funny to me how he clearly couldn't care less. This doesn't move him. It's not something he's thinking about. The only thing that really triggers it is when he's thinking about the campaign, because he's always so caught up in the past. And speaking of being caught up in the past, just listen to Trump right here.
We had gasoline at $1.84. We actually had it much lower than that for a little period of time, but we had it at $1.84. And then they took my policy and they really messed it up. And then they went back to my policy. They always said, well, we were drilling just as much. What they don't say is, if I were there, we would have been double or triple that number. But they basically took my policy because it was going through the roof. They said, we're really in trouble. So they went back to my policy as much as they could, but not all the way back. And the energy is what caused us the problem. They went up at the beginning, if you remember. Then they went back to try and bring it down. They had to harness that horse. But they went back, and it went up, and it went up really dramatically, and that caused everything else to go up. And energy goes up, and energy, when it comes down, we're going to bring a lot of things. So we're counting on you guys to supply and demand to bring that cost of energy down. You bring that down, and everything else is going to fall.
Now, Trump probably doesn't actually care. No, he doesn't probably not. He does not care about the price of groceries, but gas is a little bit different. Not because it matters to him how your life is impacted, or for any of his MAGA supporters for that matter. He does care that they give him money and storm the Capitol for him. Of course he doesn't care about their lives, but the price of gas is just such a direct number that he can point to that. That's why he is so caught up in it, because it works for his brain. brain. He can understand 3 digits, but that's about the feeling for Donald Trump. And it's the reason when he was going off on his, as the Wall Street Journal called this, stupidest trade war ever, he didn't want to raise tariffs to an equivalent amount on energy coming into the country from Canada, their oil, which is predominantly distributed out through the Midwest because it's just quick ease of access for them. A lot of Trump country out there. And so he lowered the percentage of that tariff. And I kept saying, Donald, why, if you think that the tariffs are so great and you know they don't raise prices, why do you care? But clearly, he has caught up in understanding that the fact that prices are going up, he's getting embarrassed for it. And speaking of embarrassing, take a look at this nonsense right here.
There was no reason to allow millions of criminals into our country, millions. People that were, I'd say 3 million, 4 million, 21 million people all told, but 3 million, 4 million criminals, many, many thousands and thousands of murderers, people that murdered people, killers, people that murdered 2 people, 3 people, and even 4 people in jail, in solitary confinement. They let them out of jails from all over the country, but really from all over the world.
I don't want to say that he ever fear-mongered correctly, but this is just garbage, blah nonsense. It doesn't even begin to make sense. The words coming out of his mouth, he's just trying to create some distraction. That is what this is all about all the time. And always for Donald Trump. We can just think of him in a frame of really 2 ideas. How do we distract from the damage that I'm doing? And how do I pretend to look tough as I get weaker and weaker every day? As a lame duck president with a Congress that can't get anything done, and I won't have in 2 years because Democrats will have sweeping electoral victories. That is what Donald Trump is thinking about. That's why he's so worried, and that's why, again, trying to distract, but he's also trying to beef up himself. But take a look at what he had to say about RFK Jr. trying to do just that.
Very important. You know, when we talk Bobby Kennedy, I think he's up there having dinner tonight. It's very interesting, but he's a good person, and he's not a radical. He said, you know, I'm getting sort of this reputation of being anti-vaccine and everything else. He said, I'm not anti, and I understand through the campaign that his kids had vaccines and all. He said, you know, I grew up in a slightly political family. Would you say that was the Kennedy? He said, I grew up in a political family. I mean, I'm not a crazy person. I'm very moderate in a certain way, and I never forgot that, and I think it's true. But
I think saying the man is not crazy, that he's not a lunatic, that he's not a radical, does not make me feel better. Imagine if I was recommending a restaurant to you and I was like, oh, they got a great pasta. It will not give you food poisoning. It doesn't give food poisoning. You will not get food poisoning from the chicken that they have. It's delicious. You'd be like, I didn't bring up food. I didn't bring up food poisoning. What? Why do you have to say that RFK Jr. isn't a lunatic? Well, maybe it's because he is. Maybe because that's exactly what he is, and that's what the Trump administration is about uplifting lunatics, going after people doing real jobs, which is what Trump did right here.
And you see what they've been spending money on, the horrible USAID, the horrible things that they're spending money on. It's got to be kickbacks. You know, they send the money to the guy, he takes the money and he sends them back. Most of the money he keeps some for himself, in my opinion. I think that's because you can't send the money to these groups of people. It's a terrible thing, and I think it's like that in others too.
Oh gosh, it's so hard. And someone made this point about Donald Trump attacks on trans Americans serving in the military for someone who is a draft dodger to make decisions about those who are volunteering to give their lives for our country to serve. Our country, to defend our freedoms, is disgusting. And that applies to Yassal's AE, 2 people who have dedicated a life of service to a really just cause of protecting the world and protecting America as well. For Donald Trump, who doesn't care about service, to then say, we're getting ready here, is abhorrent. And it's the reason I'm glad to be sharing this news with you right here.
A federal judge has just paused the USAID administrative leave after hearing arguments in Washington. Judge Carl Nichols says he will grant the plaintiff's request for a temporary restraining order or pause of the planned administrative leave for thousands of USAID employees. Judge Nichols saying this, quote, I will be entering tonight, sometime between now and midnight, a limited, very limited, temporary restraining order that will be directed at the placement of the 2,200 or 2,700 employees on administrative leave, and then the accelerated removal of people from their countries.
I just want to make sure people understand sort of the legal frame. There's tons of important things to say about the consequences, like why should one care about USAID? I'm not the person really for that. In terms of like legally what's going on is all sorts of problems when you act so precipitously. One, when you have just contractors, there's going to, if you just say, oh, wait, by the way, come back, you're not getting any more money. Well, you know, they have contracts. So you may.
Like the farmers that provide the wheat or the peanuts.
Exactly. So you have Americans who are providing the material. And then you also have vendors. Like not everyone who works at USAID is an employee. Some of those people are under contract. So all of this could be a huge amount of waste because you've breached those contracts. That's one bucket of problems. The second bucket is the same thing we've been talking about in terms of the Department of Justice and the FBI, which is people have rights. Yes, you can fire people for cause, you can downsize. They're all things you can do, but the reason it takes a while is because people have rights, and if you just say you're gone, it reminds me of the Muslim ban. If you do it precipitously, you end up with the same incompetence that we saw in Trump 1.0. This is not better. The reason you're seeing all of these TROs is because the judges are saying, wait a second, there are hoops you have to jump through. You, Nicole, you're entitled to be heard before this happens. And so that's like a second bucket before you do this. And then the third is Congress, which is like Congress has the power of the purse. You can't just take that funding and say, you know what? I'd like to spend it on something else. Well, you know whose choice that is? That's Congress's choice. They may not be speaking up, but that is illegal to do that. So you have these three buckets of legal issues where you really have the sense that this administration is, we don't care, what are you going to do about it? And that is why you are seeing for the past week court after court after court. And these are judges, by the way, these judges are not the sort of like, oh, these are Obama judges or Biden judges. You are seeing this across the board because those are judges who believe in and have taken an oath to the rule of law. And that's why you're seeing these, where it ultimately leads, we'll see it. Much of this will end up in the Supreme Court. But I really want to make sure people understand that there are rights here that courts are saying have been violated, and don't think that even though you heard about Project 2025 and that these people are going to be so much better in terms of implementation, the reason you're seeing all of this happening in these TROs is the same incompetence.
Much more than we thought they would. The courts are stepping up and pushing back against Donald Trump. And what we need to do to support that is to not allow ourselves to get too much in this doom and gloom. If we always think Trump is won, or Elon's going to be able to get through what he wants, and we just kind of bemoan their attacks on our government, just go, this is terrible. Instead of just saying this is illegal, they want us to take the path. This is terrible. We got to take the path that this is illegal. They're committing crimes that are going to be stopped because the courts will step in. It may take time, but they will. We have to be a part of that fight. It's what we're going to be doing on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue bar in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.